Today, we talk to an 8-figure seller who's on his way to 9 figures, and we discuss the things that maybe not a lot of sellers know too much about, like remote fulfillment program, Amazon Business, AWD, and more. How cool is that? Pretty cool, I think. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Serious Sellers Podcast by Helium 10. I am your host, Bradley Sutton, and this is the show that's a completely BS-free, organic conversation about serious strategies for serious sellers of any level in the e-commerce world. And we've got a first-time seller, first-time brand on the podcast, at least, coming on. Brian from the snowy regions of, where are you at again?
We're out of Pennsylvania.
In Pennsylvania. We don't know nothing about snow out here in Southern California near the beaches here. But hey, we had to postpone the podcast a little bit this morning due to snow. I have never had that before for me because we don't know anything about snow here. But hey, different strokes for different folks. Now, Brian, were you born and raised there in Pennsylvania?
No, I'm actually from Chicago originally.
Okay. Did you go to college?
No, I was in the Navy right out of high school.
All right. I like it. Getting same as me. I just got into something after high school. Didn't go to college. I actually went to college like later in life just because one of the companies paid me to do it. When you got out of the Navy, what was your first gainful employment?
My first, I believe if I remember correctly, I worked HVAC for a company when I got out of the Navy.
Excellent. Now, how over time did you discover e-commerce?
E-commerce, I discovered. Probably started with eBay a little bit. I was doing stuff with eBay going back to the times when you used to actually send checks to people hoping they were going to send you your stuff before, the platform had, payment terms and all this other kind of stuff. I used to buy a lot of, like gold and silver. I like coins and stuff. And I remember buying lots and I was getting them for such a good deal, not even thinking of the fact that I'm literally sending a check, hoping that they're going to send me my stuff. And they always did. I didn't have a problem, but that's kind of where I started. As far as this e-commerce journey, I got into because I was actually buying paintbrushes online, and I ended up buying. I hate washing brushes, and that's kind of how I got into this. But I bought a bunch of these sets. So there's some guy from China in California was selling on eBay these 3-pack brush sets. And they ended up being like maybe $1 a brush, something like that. So I just chuck them, which I always did. And they were good enough for my use. And I started buying. Next thing you know, he started doing these auctions, these 99-cent auctions. Well, nobody would buy these bulk auctions once it got up to a certain level except me. I ended up having like 3,000 or 4,000 of these sets sitting in a basement. My now wife, then girlfriend, my dad's laughing like, what are you going to do with them? I'm like, I'll sell them eventually if I don't, Needless to say, about a year later, I'm still using them, but have probably 1,500 units left. And the guy's not on there anymore. I'm like, I'll try to sell them. Ended up doubling up my money on what I paid for them without even trying. And then from there, I went online and started resourcing again.
What year are we talking about, more or less?
My first order that I placed would have been actually 9 years ago last month. Yeah,
were you a painter? Did you have that as a business, or why were you?
I owned the construction company doing residential rehab at the time.
Okay, so then you kind of just like backed your way into e-commerce. Like, wait a minute, this guy's selling this stuff for cheap. I can resell it.
Yeah, I've owned a couple other businesses. I've actually imported from Taiwan before China was the big importer back in the day, with my woodworking supply company. But I had long been out of it. I was heavy into construction, and it started as a pure side hustle. I mean, we don't think about it anymore. And my wife since has quit her job and worked for the company for it'll be 4 years in March now. But now it's like I sit here and think about the first order, which was like $3,800, from China. And I remember telling my then girlfriend, now wife, that Jen, that if we lose it, it's going to stink, but I can take the hit. Now we send hundreds of thousands. I don't even think twice about it. It's just part of doing business.
Yeah. So in those early days, Were you reselling it on eBay or on Amazon?
I started on eBay. I
Okay.
got on Amazon by accident.
When was this?
2017 maybe?
Okay.
No, 2018 probably. Yeah,
Right
but
about when Helium 10 was getting started.
yeah, a guy that I knew that I was friends with that had a comic book shop. He was on Amazon. So he was on eBay, he was on Amazon, he was, all over the place. And he's like, "Oh, you got to be on Amazon." And so he actually started putting my stuff on his account on Amazon, selling it. And then I saw that it started selling. I'm like, "Well, I got to figure out how to do this." And then went from there. And then it just, then it was, it was first it was seller fulfilled. Then I remember reading the concept of, oh, you're going to get 60% more traction if it's FBA. And I remember honestly looking at that stat, thinking that's complete,
Mhm.
there's no way. And then you do it, and it's honestly absolutely true. Your traction completely trucks down for so many reasons, not just because there's a lot of reasons for that, but it's interesting, when you read this stuff, but then when you actually see it, you go about it and you learn all the details. I mean, I remember two of my products were one's still one of my biggest hero products, but they were number one and number two for paintbrushes, but they were a child parent listing, and it used to drive me nuts because at the time I'm like, how come I don't see them organically? I see them advertised, I've got them there, they're ranked, but I don't see them. Well, I didn't realize that Amazon won't let two child listings on the first page, even though they're
Yep.
they're they're changing that a little bit now. We're actually testing it more than
Yep.
changing. I don't know if they'll ever keep it that way, but they're testing it. Um, but I remember when I split that, as soon as I split it, 5 minutes later, there it is, one and two. It was kind of crazy, all the
Yeah.
little learning processes.
At what point, if it has, did Amazon become your full time thing and then you left the construction and paint business?
I mean, it was a side hustle for years. So my wife used to be the director of CHOP ophthalmology. She quit her job 4 years ago, it'll be. And then before that, I mean, I slowly started getting out of it probably. I mean, it's been almost 6 or 7 years probably, and it's mostly Amazon. Our major amount of gross volume comes from Amazon, but we also do, we're more omni-channel. I mean, we're on Walmart, we're on different things. I even had a talks with Linzer, who has has shown interest in potentially buying me out. Um, and we're actually talking right now with trying to talk to one of the Walmart Omnichannel buyers because my brand's on their radar too.
Fast forward to 2025 across all the platforms. What do you estimate gross sales being?
This year, probably close to 20 million.
That's congrats on that. Now you mentioned Walmart, you mentioned Amazon. Still selling on eBay. You doing TikTok Shop at all? What other
eBay is
platforms?
actually growing this year, believe it or not. The thing is, it's really hard because when you're smaller, you go where the money is, and obviously anybody who knows, they know Amazon is going to give you the most gross. Whether it's the most profitable is another thing, but it's going to give you the most gross. It just Amazon compared to Walmart, eBay, whatever. I can put all my other channels together. It's not going to get close to what I do in volume on Amazon.
Yeah.
But on the same token, as you get a little more grown into the business, as you get more mature and either have VAs or in-house employees, whatever direction you go, then you start learning like eBay. We never changed our eBay listings and items for years. Never even did
Mhm.
marketing. It was just there. This year we actually adjusted that, and it's already, with just little, like, not even, I wouldn't say 5%, you know, help. It's already probably doubled, almost tripled what we were doing
Wow.
just by some incremental numbers. And that'll grow from there. Wholesale is our next big push. But Amazon, wholesale is the only thing for us that I believe has the chance to get close to the Amazon numbers.
Yeah.
And only because we're talking large buyers. So average order value is much higher. You're talking hundreds of dollars. So, when you're talking on Amazon, my average order value is maybe, $12 to $15. Our average order value on our website is between $125 to $200 because of the buyers we're going, and that'll only grow. So when you look at it from that perspective, well, 2,000 to 3,000 orders on Amazon's a lot, but if it's only $15, that means I only have to do three, 400 is what I need to gain on a website of the same caliber to, to match those kind of numbers.
For Amazon, are you only in Amazon USA or are you doing any other country?
We are doing Canada. So we've always done NARF, which gave me an idea. We're getting ready to send stuff in. Now, actually, we're in the beta program. Canada's doing a new program, Amazon Canada, where they're actually taking your Amazon US inventory and they're importing it in for you and putting it in Amazon Canada, FBA, so that your prices could be lower. So it's not just an individual product. So the fees actually go down greatly.
And that's going to be part of the remote fulfillment program where you're not.
Yes. It's basically like NARF on speed. So it's like a bulk NARF. So instead of bringing in, 1 unit at a time, as somebody buys it, they're going to bring in 50 units of that one product, put it in my FBA, my Canada FBA inventory, and then it'll just go out just like regular Canada FBA will. And then
is this like for people who have a track record of the regular, NARF or remote fulfillment doing well, or do you think people from day one are going to be able to do this?
It's a beta program. So I don't know when. I know the beta program is literally just going to start in about a week. It's very limited. I was told, because of who I am and my company and all that, obviously all that hee-haw BS that they tell you, that we were part of it, which is fine. And we're getting ready. It's there's some hoops to do. You got to get a Canadian importer, stuff that I would need anyway, but I didn't need for NARF. But and then I guess it's like beta anything. They're doing this, and then I think it'll once they see if it's good or successful from there, they'll probably, I'm sure, like Amazon always does, they'll roll it out across the board because It makes sense. Because if you do NARF right now, everybody, you don't see it because you're still making the same amount of profits, but they're factoring in how much it's going to cost to send that 1 unit from USA warehouse to Canada and then send it to that person. Where now they're taking 10, 20, and then obviously they'll consolidate all those eventually, which would be my guess, from all the sellers that they're doing this for, whatever the program is, import it in from the US to Canada. But for a guy like me, who I can send it right in from Vietnam or China or Indonesia, wherever, whichever country I'm bringing stuff in from, I can easily, bring it right in from there to Canada. Which is my goal, but I can use this as a tester just to kind of get a feel for what products, how many, and then I think Canada to me will be the first layer before I go like EU and UK, because that'll be the first test, of an easy test for me to figure out how much more I need to increase my margin in order to pay for disposal fees and other things out there to make sure I'm still making the same amount of margin, and then I can start pushing the other cross-border places.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a cool thing, especially for some of the other remote fulfillments, like even Brazil, opened up, but then it'll have the Prime badge, and for Canada the same thing, but it'll still say 7-day shipping or something like that, even though it has Prime. Or for Brazil, it's kind of crazy. It's like 14-day shipping. Yeah. So sure, there's a Prime badge, but then the customer's like, well, I'm not going to wait 2 weeks for this. But then I would imagine under this new program that they'll probably see 2-day shipping.
That's exactly, and that's exactly right. It's going to get people. Plus, it's going to, I believe, it's going to also deteriorate a lot of, because there's a lot of people that sell on my brand on Canada, that they're trying to sell, and obviously they're probably buying it from us in the US or whatever and stocking it and then selling it seller fulfilled right there, which I really don't care, but it'll deplete that stuff too, because they have to raise their price so high, but it's still in a lot of cases lower than a NARF price, because a NARF price is really high. I mean, when you're talking a per unit price to go cross border, especially now with all the chaos going on, it's crazy.
I want to talk about some unique strategies that you guys are doing that are different than most. And one of them, I know, talking to you before is you're really into the Amazon business program, and you get a lot of sales from there, but I don't think we've talked too much about it on this show before. So can you first explain to the listeners out there, what is the Amazon business, the B2B stuff, and like, how does it show up, for customers? How do businesses get in there? Like, what does it mean on fulfillment? So just give an overview of the program.
Well, I mean, anybody can be, so Amazon business, anybody that's been, on that has, a business account, you can sign up for an Amazon business account. So it's an Amazon account, but for businesses. So, and a lot of people, I think, initially they think business buyers, but it's just for anybody, whether it's a 1 or 2 man operation. It could be a little construction company. It could be a huge corporation, which they have too. And then they have a whole division. We have our own B2B rep that through Amazon that helps us out, that obviously wants us to grow. And there's lots of programs within there depending on, and then there's metrics. Now, I believe like even us, we probably get more B2B sales than even what that shows, just because I think a lot of people, I can tell you right now, I have a business account and I use my business account maybe 10% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I usually buy off Amazon right off my personal account because most of the time I don't care about the quick shipping. So I'd rather get the extra dollar credit on free, videos that I buy or whatever, those, little digital credits are that they give me all the time. But that's just me. A lot of business buyers, especially for bigger companies, they're buying off of there. So, with our products, we have a good, it's a disposable, a lot of them are consumable. So, a lot of people are using them. So it's great for B2B, depending on what you get. Another good example of products like that is school supplies and stuff like that. There's always teachers and stuff that are buying B2B, and they have certain programs during that time that if you have a B2B rep, they'll talk about and they'll say, oh, we're doing this program, you can do this. And then it shows right on there. And then there's different strategies from there. Like they have their case pack quantities, where you can do, instead of like 1 unit, you can then do a 48 pack count. You can then do a whole pallet, which is, in this case, like from that product that I'm talking about, it's 24 cases. Each case has 48 counts. And then you could have, in most of those, you can actually get a discount on seller fees by selling it. And then usually you can get better shipping because you're shipping it right from your warehouse. And that's where it gets, for stuff like that, that's where it gets, depending on what you do and how big it is. You can still do it FBA with some, but the hard part is it's just like when it's anything else. It's like doing the virtual bundles. Virtual bundles is a great tester to me, but it's not the way I want to do things long term, because unfortunately you're still paying the same FBA fee for the 2 products. So it's the same thing. Like it's hard to keep on giving discount upon discount upon discount, so, but like what we do for the B2B pricing is we make sure it's at least like 5 cents down, just so it shows a discount.
So there's not like a minimum where it's like, oh, you got to have at least 10% off.
You don't have
you
to.
can go as low as 5
you
cents.
can get better traction maybe because of certain things.
Sure.
The fact is, if you don't have the margin, it's like when you're talking about like now the deals and the 7-day deals and the prime, all these other Prime Day, it's really hard sometimes because Amazon wants a certain level, but with them doing reference prices and changing, kind of taking away some of the loopholes some of us knew about to keep reference pricing, higher, it's really hard to do that. Now, for me being USA based, I do a lot of seller fulfilled too. So some of my reference prices are easier because I have a seller fulfilled listing and I have an FBA listing for everything. So it's easy for me to get a strike through price sometimes than it is for other people. But it's, but yeah, I mean, you don't have to, for the B2B, you don't have to give a huge discount, but they also say that like, even if you want to give a 1% discount, if you can afford that, business buyers are normally not going to have as many returns as regular buyers.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's part of their stick that like the rep will say, they'll be like, oh, well, business buyers are, I forget what the numbers are, but they'll say they're, 30% better chance of not returning it, which if you look at the numbers and you add it up, that does add to margin. So you can, possibly, try to give them that. But we've grown over the year. I mean, we've grown at least, 20, 30% with B2B sales every year the last 3 or 4 years.
What percentage of your overall Amazon USA sales is B2B business?
I want to say maybe it's roughly 30% now, somewhere in that range.
That's a big percentage.
I mean, we have a lot. I mean, and that's gross because like if you look at orders, I'm sure it's a lot less.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at actual orders. But the thing is, most of the business buyers, I've got some repeat customers that buy, every single month, so I mean, there's times we look at custom orders And it's something, we're doing it now because we're trying to track into our software and figure out how we can, how we can really hone it down, which is nearly impossible the way Amazon blocks certain information. But
Yeah.
but it's interesting sometimes when you go into, to Amazon Seller Central and then you look at an account, you see somebody that's bought, literally 30 times. And then you're like, oh, wow, they must have been buying from us for years. But it's 30 times they've literally only been buying from us for 2 years. So when you look at that and you're like, wow, but it's just consistent. And it's not even subscribe and save that I'm talking about. Like just recently we started getting the subscribe and save, but I don't think subscribe and save is, I'd be surprised if it ever, like we will never do subscribe and save like supplements do subscribe and save.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just a different product.
So, how do you bring visibility to these? Like, are you doing the special modifiers in your advertising to like, like a bid modifiers for business customers, or is just a matter of turning it on and setting the price for your listings and just wait for the sales to come in?
At first it was just turning it on, didn't have any time. I mean, now that they've changed the rules and allowed us to do different things with that, my PPC team has done, started doing different modifiers and adjusting, our internal algorithm that we use for pay-per-click advertising. And they try to increase B2B because again, the margin's a little bit better and we know the conversion's a little bit better. But I mean, our conversion rate's pretty high in general as it is compared to most right now. So, but we're always looking to figure out how to do even more.
Do you have SKUs? You mentioned some bulk SKUs that you're fulfilling by merchant. Do you have SKUs that are only available to business, or everything is duly listed as you have a regular price and a B2B price?
Everything's available to everybody. And we always have a
Okay.
B2B price just so it shows up there a little bit better. If we had, now they do say that it would show up more or it would show up in different placements if it's a certain percent. So like when you talk about that 10%, there's certain rules that they have with that. Now, does that matter in my niche? I don't know. It's, it doesn't affect us. That I can see, but I can also tell you that I'll never be able to do 10% lower either. Like we can do 10% lower when we're doing a pallet or maybe,
Mhm.
multiple cases of something because we're fulfilling it internally. So that changes the dynamics of the shipping. So even us being on the East Coast, even if we sell a case of 48, shipping it to the East Coast, from the West Coast to the East Coast to the West Coast, I can still save 10%, give the customer a 10% discount, and make maybe an extra 2 or 3% just because of the shipping differential.
Yeah.
But that's the difference. But again, that's where it gets harder. The difference between me with a warehouse in the US or US based compared to a person using a third party warehouse. Because third party warehouse, it's a different dynamics.
Sure.
Even though I think AWD actually, if I remember correctly, if it's going to a business address, AWD now has new pricing to do discounts to business addresses in bulk cases.
Interesting. Which would make sense because fulfillment is cheaper,
It
to
is,
there
and,
for
and
them.
that's
So that
that's why I
makes
said
sense.
I know they have it. I haven't looked at it in a while, but I know when the last time I talked to my AWD rep a few months ago, we talked about that, and it was something that it wouldn't work for me because we use AWD. We do like a hybrid model with our warehousing. We use AWD along with our internal warehouse, but it really wouldn't work with all my other stuff because when they do that, it's got to be per case. So however you send it in a bulk case, that's how you would have to send it. But that's one way if you're like a third party seller, say in Africa and China, wherever, if you send in full case to AWD, you can actually make your bulk buying. You can have your single unit. And then if you don't have the margin to lower, for multiple other, you could just do a case price just to see if it happens and then figure out what that fulfillment would be for AWD if you use AWD. And that would be one way to actually save money and potentially give a discount to see if you can get some traction.
Yeah. AWD is something that a lot of Amazon sellers aren't sure if they should get into. You obviously have found something that I guess works for you, but like, how should somebody, a brand out there, kind of like, what should their thought process be on if they should get into it or not, depending on their circumstances? Like, what should they be considering?
Cautious. I mean, everything's cautious. Now, I've never dealt with any other third party warehouses. I've
Mhm.
only ever had my own fulfillment. So it was always either me, whether it be, in the beginning, it was my basement, turned into a 12 by 40-foot shed that I built, which instantaneously turned into a storage unit that turned into my first warehouse, all the way up to the warehouse that we just bought that we're moving into. So we've always had that. So I've never dealt with that. Now, if you have a third party warehouse and the fees aren't that bad, it's, okay. Now, a lot of people are going to AWD because Amazon is forcing you to turn that way because of all the fees. All your different fees now, they're doing that to kind of help you. For me, it makes sense because we're on the East Coast. So, like, part of it for me is, I go West Coast to East Coast. So I'm saving about $1,200 for a full 40-foot container, a 40-foot HC. I'm saving $1,000, $1,200. So I'd rather send it to the West Coast. But so so I'm trying different models. So I send stuff, if it goes to AWD, it goes in the West Coast. So I save $1,200 instantaneously. I save on my guys' warehousing. We don't have to take a full container, which turns into 40 skids, put it away, and then tag it all and send it to FBA, however we're doing it. It can all go there. And then I have everything on my screen through AWD. I haven't had that much problem with lost things. I have a rep with AWD. So the couple times that we have had, minor issues, but you need to do it cautiously and you can't expect it to just happen quick. Like things aren't going to go, and people think that just because it goes to AWD, it's an Amazon FBA. But to Amazon, AWD is a completely separate entity. This is AWD, this is FBA, even though their warehouses are literally probably on the same complex. To them,
Mhm.
it's completely separate. So unfortunately, people have to realize, in order for it to get into AWD, it's probably going to take a couple weeks. And then in order for it to go to FBA, it's then going to have to get triggered in their system and then take a couple weeks. And then it has to get filled in with FBA. So I mean, it's a once you start the cycle and once you get it flowing like everything else, it can flow fine. But I wouldn't trust their numbers, and I would keep use your own data to try to figure it out because you could always go into Seller Central in the AWD and automatically send in more replenishment. You can do that manually too.
You have how big is your warehouse? Your new warehouse you just bought?
The one we just bought is 25,000 square feet.
So you're sending, like, let's say you order 2 containers of a couple products. You send one to AWD and one to your own warehouse for your own fulfillment, or how
So
does that work?
so we're doing kind of a high. So what we're doing is we're sending in stuff to AWD that we know we're going to run through pretty quick. And actually it's going to even morph into stuff that really runs through quick. Like I've got a product that we sell a 40 two different products. We sell 40-foot containers almost every month of each one of the products. So we can literally fill one container of each one of these products every single month and send it in. So that's just 2 items. So the idea is, if I can get capacity limits up and AGL can actually stick it to their timeline, which is my concern with it. It's not about the price anymore with this, it's about the timeline. Because if they're off by 2 weeks, that means I could be out if I don't drip it in, which I keep more product than I should probably anyway. But so we're going to a hybrid where we send in, they raise the capacity limits on those products. We send those in right to FBA. We still have some coming to our East Coast warehouse because we have regular distribution. Plus, I like to have some on hand for oopsies, which happen. And then
Yeah.
we have a certain amount of capacity that'll go right to AWD. That way, it takes a lot of this burden off my shoulders and my warehouse's shoulders, so I don't have to have an extra guy as we grow. Because internally, moving out, like when we do loads, I mean, we send, like right now, they just loaded 2 tractor trailers. We do, 26, 28 skids to 5 locations every time we do stuff to FBA in order to
Wow.
maximize it because it's 5 locations, so you don't pay any fees, and then it's getting distributed out. But in order to do that, I mean, that's 5 28 skid loads that somebody's pulling from inventory, stickering each box, and throwing it out. Where if we send it right to AWD, Amazon AWD is doing all that stuff for us.
Mhm.
But as we're growing now, it makes more sense because what that means is if I keep with a hybrid method, my 25,000 square foot warehouse will last me many more years while I still
Yeah.
grow than if I do it the other way.
What would you say? moving into 2026 is the biggest kind of like concern you have, or thing that keeps you up at night, or thing that you're going to have to really optimize around? Is it profitability? Is it increasing competition? What's keeping you up at night?
Well, nothing's keeping me up at night. I sleep like a rock when I
I
sleep.
like it.
But no, there's lots of things that always go through your head. To me, it's, my lofty goal is to go from, within the next 3 years, I want to go from an 8-figure seller to a 9-figure seller. And the only way I see that happening is by increasing products. So it's all about, we talked about this before we started this, we're planning on doing a minimum of 2026, a minimum 30 new products every single month. Right now in my warehouse, I'm already set as far as products.
We talked about some unique things that you're doing that maybe some sellers aren't doing, or just don't pay much attention to, like Amazon Business, remote fulfillment, AWD. Is there another strategy, more of a quick hitting one, not something that will take about 10 minutes to talk to, but some kind of to talk about, but some kind of like quick hitting strategy that you guys think that you are unique compared to the average seller that's allowed you to scale the way you have?
I think what's allowed me to really grow, and part of what it is I'm in a niche on something that I understand, that I've been around in one capacity or another for a long time. Okay. And then at the same time, I always call myself, I'm the boring entrepreneur, because I just work. It's a business. A lot of people get into this and I don't care why I got into it as a side hustle. I never meant it. We joke. I have a video. I should have shared it with you, but I didn't think about it. But I have a video of it's our second order that we got in. It's in the basement of our old house. And I literally, as it's going, I say, welcome to the new brush empire, because it was just a joke. But then over the years, it literally turned into a brush empire that we just kind of built, off of that. So it's one of those things where no matter what your reason is and what your why is, just know that it's a real business. It's work. Treat it like a real business. Understand your numbers. Whether you're talking bookkeeping or whatever, everybody wants a hack. Everybody wants a quick win. And those are all fine and nice, but it takes work to actually, work and goals and, drive to get it where you want to be.
Well, thank you, Brian, for coming on here. You've been a Helium 10 Elite member for a long time, and we've always interacted. And I was always wanted to interview you to get a little bit more insights into how you've scaled your business to this number. And it'd be nice to talk to you in a year or two once you've hit that 100 million mark.
I appreciate
to see what brought you there. But thanks again, Brian, and we'll be definitely keeping in touch.
Thank you.